Hello again. This is SCLC TV. I'm your host, Maynard Eaton. And as always, we have the premier civil rights leader, our president and CEO, Dr. Charles Steele Jr. Dr. Steele, you're not a health expert, but as you do know, COVID-19 is hurting the Black community in America. People are dying.
Maynard, I am a health expert. When I go to the doctor every 6 weeks or 2 or 3 months, and I get a feedback on my condition health-wise. We all should be an expert. And I walk every morning and every night. I am an expert. COVID-19 has knocked us out of the park in terms of a bad way. Not a home run, but dismember us from the park in its entirety. We're not even nowhere close to first base, second base, not to mention home plate. But the fact being is that you and I just discussed a fact in that there are over 2,000 doctors who are suffering coming out of medical school because they can't actually have internship in terms of that residential requirement to become a medical doctor. This thing is hurting us from all facets of life. We are not in a position economically as poor people and Black people in terms of the economy. We never have been competitive. As you know, before the pandemic came, 75% of Americans that go to work every day, Black, green, white, or blue, 75% was living from check to check. So, Mr. Eaton, when you think about a pandemic that's taking place and we were living from check to check, 75% of us, my Lord, where do we go from here?
Collaboration. There is no check now. There is no check now, right? For many people, there is no check.
There is no check now. Thank God we're able to do some things and adjust and pivot. I like the term pivot. In life, you have to pivot. And also in life, you can't take the elevator. You got to take the stairs. That's where we are. So, ladies and gentlemen, we can't be comfortable in what we thought we should have or should be because of the dues that we pay to society. We are in this thing together, and it's all about collaboration. The lack of collaboration has really affected us, and it's affecting us more now. Let me go a little further, man, and I'm going to listen to you. My grandmother, mother, father, and aunt, and the extended family used to knock on the door next door, and the next door would knock on us. Miss Carrie used to say, "Can you tell your mama to send me a cup of sugar? Can she put a piece or 3 pieces of light bread on top of it? Not white bread, light bread. And by the way, send me some sausages so I can prepare breakfast tomorrow morning for my family." I challenge you to go next door now and ask for a cup of sugar or some eggs to have breakfast in the morning for your family. These are the type of cultural experiences and bring about wisdom how we can survive. We always been known to survive.
But it's a whole new world now, is it not? And has that changed the civil rights movement as well? It's a brand new day in terms of how we survive, how we live, and the things we have to fight against. How are you adapting to the change in terms of your fight for civil rights?
And that's a good one. Narrow it down to civil rights. I've had great support in my leadership with SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, from friends and relationships I've developed over the years. But guess what? This pandemic has knocked all of that away. This pandemic has restructured not only SCLC and other small businesses, and SCLC is a civil rights business. It has also brought about the adjustment and the pivoting of corporate America. Those who have been so supportive, Maynard, of SCLC and loved our mission and tried to hang in there with us, they have to hang in and try to survive. So what do? You go and develop not only the relationship, redevelop the relationship traditionally before the pandemic, but if you don't have the insight and the foresight and the relationship understanding of doing business to acquire and to impact upon new friends, you must know how to be personable in doing business and develop relationships around the world. Had we not had relationships around the world, we would be non-existent. That's why people ask me the question, are you going back to Paris? Are you going back to Italy? Are you going down to Brazil again? People that's involved with me in terms of the international experience don't understand the nature of doing business. People from day to day that see me operate, people I have a relationship with in society, in America, on this side. Not only must you have a relationship on this side, you have to have it on all sides, not of America, but the world. That's how we've been successful.
But isn't COVID-19 plaguing the world too? I mean, is that cautionary for when you travel? You got to be aware of what's the disease travels with us, right?
Absolutely. And that's a very good point you just made. How many times, Maynard, have you heard me say that we live in a global village? I've said that before the pandemic. And that was, I wish I could take credit for it. But you know what? I have to give credit to where credit gets due. That came out of Moscow, Russia. In that we live in a global village, we must be concerned about the whole world, not just God bless America. God bless America and the whole world. That came from none other than former President Mikhail Gorbachev of Russia when I was in Moscow meeting with him. And then again, 2 years later, I met with him in Berlin in terms of the commemoration of the fall of the Berlin Wall. He said, Steele, don't you ever forget that. We live in a global village. Lord have mercy. Here we are. Thank you, Jesus.
Well, here we are this week also with the Democratic National Convention in a whole new format, a virtual convention. No rallies, no cheering, no people. But also there's been no mention, to my knowledge anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, of civil rights and poor people. I mean, your agenda, the civil rights agenda or John Lewis agenda is missing from the festivities.
Well, I've been hearing Congressman Lewis' name, and that's good. And he's done a great job. But the fact being is that we are on the ground of today, and civil rights has changed. We have to protest and chew gum at the same time. What do I mean by that? We have to also be astute business-wise, economically. We must have access to capital. That's not being talked about. That's what I don't like. The restoration of Section 4 and Section 5 of the 1965 Voter Rights Act. Many of our people don't even know that we lost the protection from the federal government, which means that we are second-class citizens. And as you mentioned, man, and I said on my Zoom speeches now, that I've made the fact that we're not first class anymore. And you said some young lady responded to you by saying, tell Steele, and I saw your program, have we ever been first class? Right. By having people of color and of different opinions than what we had 50 years ago does not make us free, set us free. It's all about the groundswell of the real opportunities of the fact and recognizing the historicity of the disenchantment of African Americans and poor people and black folks and people of color. Only 3% has been having access to capital from the banks. 3%. So I don't hear that's being taught. I don't hear that's being taught from this week in terms of the agenda of the Democratic Party. Of course not. You're not going to hear it from the Republican Party. And I'm disenchanted over that, but we can't stop here. You got to finish to hold your rope. You got to go to the end. We can't give up.
Well, you're a former elected official out of Alabama, state representative. Politics, is that an answer? Is that an answer for our woes, our problems, our civil issues? Politics, will that help us out or no?
No. Politics has never freed us. It has never freed us. You have to free yourselves by collaboration of the groundswell in the community. And what we have known historically is the civil rights movement. And it started way before Rosa Parks and the bus boycott in Montgomery, without prolonging the history of where we come from, it's been with us for many of years. A. Philip Randolph and many others. Frederick Douglass, you just call the roll. Even Fatty Lou Hamer back in the 60s, getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. Read The Color of Law. It has been a conspiracy by this government ever since it's been a country, and we have been forced to come to this country. The biggest migration of forcefulness of slavery of any group, inhumane treatment of any group, is the transatlantic African slave trade. We were forced to come here. And the fact being is that since we've been here, we have been a target mechanism or force by this country, this system, to forever enslave and bring about the disenchantment and the dismantling of the black man, of the black woman, and the black family. The institution of the black family. It has always been there, and it's still there.
Speaking of dismantling of an institution, your president is supposedly, allegedly trying to undermine and dismantle the Postal Service, which delivers medicine and veterans checks and etc. It's the lifeblood of America to many black and poor communities, is it not?
It's corruption, it's dictatorship. And thank God that we had enough pressure from all Americans, even regardless of the political affiliation, from Republicans, Democrats, independents, people who are just basic tired of this situation of someone who's not caring for those who are less fortunate. That's where many of us sustain not only medically our pills and medicine coming through the mail, but our checks, as you mentioned, Mr. Eaton. I remember when I was growing up, I used to hear folks who finally realized that we could have some type of retirement say that I ain't thinking about nothing but the first of the month. What happens on the first of the month? They get their retirement check, their government check, their check that's going to sustain them and enhance them to make the rest of the week and the rest of the month. How could anyone in a position of being president of this country could be so narrow-mindedness and could be so bitter toward poor folks and folks without, we don't have, you hear me say middle class. You might be in a class, but it ain't got nothing to do with being in the middle. You're either rich or poor in this society. How could anyone who said they love the Lord and take a photo with a Bible in terms of St. John Episcopal Church and say they believe in the Lord and trying to dismantle the postal system, which people of all ethnicity and background depends upon?
Dr. Steele, let me ask you something. Are you worried about America? Are you worried about black folks now? I mean, this seems to be an awfully dismal and trying time, and it's a lot of people are stressed and despondent. What's the temperature of America? What's the temperature of America?
Thank you for the question. Maynard, that's a very, very good question. Many times, Maynard, things happen because we took things for granted. And I'm serious about this. I can't be any more serious than this. We too assuming, and I mean of all people. They're fair-minded thinking black folks, they're fair-minded thinking white folks, fair-minded thinking folks of all ethnicity and background and racial makeup. There's some good folks in this world, and particularly in America. But we're too complacent. We're too satisfied. When Dr. King himself told you the three ills in society: racism, poverty, and militaristic. The military. Dr. King was killed for two reasons: the Poor People Campaign and his opposition to the Vietnam War. That's why he was taken out. Those two reasons. And we don't get it. This system, as Dr. King say, is not in favor of us, poor people and people of color. That's just it in a nutshell. And it needs to be talked about. White people, people of color, of all ethnicity, has not been healed from slavery. We are internally bleeding. And I think our chairman of the board, Dr. Maynard, Lafayette, and others who work with him and who has that mindset on conflict reconciliation. Dr. Lafayette goes all over the world in training and teaching this. And last week, I mentioned about the influential people in my life in civil rights and with impact right there at the top with Reverend John Nettles and Dr. Lowry will be Dr. none other than my leader and chairman of the board, Dr. Maynard Lafayette. Dr. Lafayette is a quiet storm. He has made such an impact upon this world. And I travel the world with Dr. Lafayette and his wife and my wife and I. I know the impact. And you can mention the name, Maynard Lafayette, around the world. And people applaud the history of his working with Dr. King, with his training and institutionalizing. He's the first to say that in order to survive, we got to internationalize and institutionalize, because he was taught by Dr. King. And that's what Dr. King told him just prior to his assassination. He said, Bernard, now is the time to internationalize and institutionalize the civil rights movement. Going back to your question earlier, Maynard.
Yeah. Are you worried? Are you worried? Yeah.
There you go. Going right back to that. And we should be worried because we don't have the leadership and the mindset of leaders around the world, and particularly in America. America needs to initiate it, that you cannot live without institutionalizing the civil rights movement around the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, our wisdom, the wisdom of our leader.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
Say that again.
I said non-violently. See, many times we see protests of today, though those are not the kingdom philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not Dr. Maynard Lafayette. It's non-violently. You don't burn up things. You don't knock out glasses, and you don't kill folks and shoot folks. You don't carry guns. It's a kingdom philosophy of peace and non-violence.
Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO and president of SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. You've heard his wisdom. See you next week. I'm Maynard Eaton.